1 and 2. The question is that clause 1 stand part.
Mr Chairman.
I call the honourable member Andrew Little.
Well, Mr Chairman, I think this debate and this day will go down as a day of great disappointment for this House, that we have allowed to pass through, even to this stage, this very humble stage, a piece of legislation that has as its sole purpose the cutting of the state's responsibility for fair family dispute resolution and the dispensation of justice in the family arena. Everything about this legislation, the failure of the Minister to take or to heed the advice of the expert reference group, the failure to hear the myriad of submissions that raised concerns, raised issues, pointed out the risks associated with it, that in spite of all of that, we still have a piece of legislation that is going to deny a voice, a proper voice, to those who need it most when they are at their most vulnerable. Couples who are separating, particularly poor couples who are separating, and children of any couple. The most vulnerable, children being the most vulnerable in these circumstances. And this legislation says that the state no longer regards it as having a responsibility in the interests of harmony and family peace and community stability. We no longer have a responsibility to assist families to resolve their difficult issues and ensure that any separation, any dissolution of a marriage is done so in a dignified and sensible way, and that respects the rights of all parties. This legislation is a giant leap that departs from that principle that we have had in place for the last 30 years with a specialist court and a specialist jurisdiction that we've developed. That's the sad thing about it. So, Mr Chairman, a more appropriate name, a name that more correctly reflects the objects or the real intent behind this bill, might be the Family Justice Destruction Bill, because that's what it is. The family court will be there. It'll be there in name only. There will be judges there, and they will struggle to ensure that justice is done. They will rise to their professional occasion, their professional standards, and their professional calling. But they know, which is why they came to this select committee, they know that measures such as putting in place a process that denies parties the right of representation, that denies parties, those who cannot afford legal representation, the right of access to legal aid, a process that denies children the right of a voice to be heard in that process, they know that that can only be destructive when it comes to dispensing justice in the family jurisdiction. And that's what this legislation will do. No matter how we slice or dice it, no matter how we cut it, there is no question about it. The fears that we have expressed, the fears that others have expressed before the committee and more publicly, are very real, Mr Chairman. They are very real. When it comes to dealing with family disputes, we need a court and a system and a process that is sensitive and sympathetic. And we have had that. It may not have been perfect. And the Minister is right, and I agree with her about this. There have been delays. And there are some people who appear before it who, whether because of their personality or for whatever reason, have made a real fist of it and have drawn proceedings out, made it difficult for their partner and perhaps for children involved. We know that. They are few and far between. There are very few cases that are that bad and that extreme. But we are, for the sake of changing the baby, we're tossing out the bathwater. If I could completely mangle that metaphor. Mr Chairman, that is the disappointing thing about this bill. And I know members opposite, members like Tau Henare, members like Jonathan Young from New Plymouth, who has dealt with families in difficult situations. He knows this bill is wrong. And they sit there and look there and they know that this is wrong, but so far they voted for it. And that's the disappointing thing, Mr Chairman, is that we know that the risks, the fears that have been expressed are very real. This is not a good bill, and the bill is wrongly titled. It needs a different title. The Family Harmony Destruction Bill might be an even better title than the first one I suggested. but this will be very disappointing. We'll come back and we'll thrash this out to the bitter end. But let the record show that we spoke for families, for couples, we spoke for children, and we spoke for justice, because that's more important than anything.
Mr. Chairman.
I call the Honourable Philip Goff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the Labor spokesperson on justice, Andrew Little, is quite right